I've been using this exact camera setup for a whole year now, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and how I'm going to change it moving forward. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Sergio and I'm a commercial photographer here in Victoria, BC. I shoot primarily commercial advertising, still life, food, products, stuff like that. So my setup is definitely a little bit more geared towards that specifically, but I've shot a whole range of stuff this past year, from lifestyle to documentary work. I've done a lot of different, I've done architecture even with it. I've done a lot of stuff with this exact setup, and I kind of want to go over all the things that I absolutely love and not so much love about it, and I'd like to change moving forward. I don't want you guys to look at this video and think of, oh, I need to go buy all of these things. I don't have any of these things. I need to go spend a bunch of money to have a look like his or whatever. Don't think that. This is just what the current setup is like and what I love about it, and why there's certain little technical things about it that help me achieve certain things that maybe another setup wouldn't let me achieve. Very first is just about the look, and it's a big boy. For a mirrorless camera specifically, it definitely looks the part, and as silly as that might sound, for the types of shoots that I do, I don't really want to walk up on set with a really tiny camera, and it does tend to make me look more professional, or at least as professional as I want to be, because the bigger setup does tend to impress certain clients, and it's a talking point, so to speak, because, you know, it's got a few different quirks about it that you're like, hey, what is this, what is that, what is that? And let's just start with, like, the first one probably is my big battery on the bottom. So this over here is just a V-mount battery that obviously you can get smaller ones. This is a 99 watt hour one, but you can get skinnier ones or even bigger ones as well, depending on the weight or how much length of battery life you want. Essentially what this allows me to do is, because we're shooting mirrorless and because I shoot with manual focus lenses for the most part, I need to have live view open, and I need to be fine-tuning my focus or going back to capture one, and there's just a lot of times where the camera is on and I have to shoot for 6, 7, 8 hours, and I don't want to have to be swapping batteries throughout the day. Furthermore, I think what this allows me to do is just, sometimes the camera is, you know, rigged overhead, or it's really hard and out of reach, and it's tricky to just go and change the battery even to begin with. So having one of these just allows me to always make sure I have plenty of battery life. And, you know, I'm pretty lazy. I will often forget to charge my batteries or things like that, and I can literally go do a whole weekend shoot with just this as long as it's charged, and go on 4 or 5 different restaurant shoots and still have plenty of juice in this thing for everything I need to do. And obviously I use it for YouTube too. Right now I'm using my other setup, but this helps me just make sure I can pre-record 4 or 5 videos and just shoot in 4K the whole time and never have it drop out or anything, because it's got plenty of battery. And if the video does stop at some point, we'll know that it's because I'm running on the little Canon batteries here for this little setup over here. And this over here, we got the phone angle. So hopefully this is looking decent for you guys. So that's the battery. That's why I use it. And just kind of clips on to a little V-mount plate. That's at the bottom here. And that V-mount plate is... a nice satisfying click. And this V-mount plate is on my cage for this is just a newer cage that I found on Amazon. It was like 70 or 80 bucks. It's pretty cheap. And it just fits the camera perfectly, and I love that. I was looking for that back when I had the XH1, and I literally got scammed out of some money from some random store overseas because I was looking for that very specific cage that I couldn't find anywhere other than like the $300-400 wooden camera ones. But anyway, for this setup specifically, what the cage allows me to do is it allows me to obviously put the battery on the bottom. At first, I had the Manfrotto plate on the bottom like you normally would, and I mounted the battery to the side, but I wasn't able to handhold it. Whereas now, I can still handhold the camera decently comfortably, and if I need to, I can have it handheld and move around with it and still have a decently ergonomic camera that looks big and beefy, but it's still, very, like I said, very ergonomic, and I put my hand underneath here and I can have a decently steady shot. I can even do this for video, but I probably wouldn't use this lens for video stuff just because it's like shooting handheld with a 90mm without any kind of IBIS or anything is gonna be pretty shaky, probably. So for the most part, this is just a photo setup, but I can still definitely do a lot of documentary work like I've done, lifestyle stuff with this setup, because it just allows me to be run and gun and walk around, and I can just manual focus like this, and it's pretty sturdy. Like I have like a nice grip on it. It's nice and sturdy. Next up, I have on the side here is my little DIY piece of elastic and a tiny little alligator clip, which holds my tether cable, because I shoot tethered 99.9% of the time, and this just allows me to have a nice sturdy connection, and it pulls on this before it pulls on the cable, so it hopefully doesn't break the camera input. This costed me, well, to buy all of the materials, it might have costed me $5, but I can make like 100 of these. No offense, Tether Tools, I love your stuff, but I'm not going to pay $50 for a jerk stopper. This works plenty fine. I also shoot Manfrotto, so we don't have I don't think they have a tether block for their Manfrotto plates. I don't think it would make sense with the way that this stuff works, but I use Manfrotto tripods and I just like their stuff. So no endorsements, just, I just like their stuff. I've always used it, so whatever. Maybe it's just a creature of habit. Next, it does give me a few extra hot shoes on this cage, which allows me to use the microphones if I'm ever using them, or any other kind of, oh yeah, actually, let me get this. So I actually used this on a shoot back when I was in Toronto a few months ago. And this is just a cold shoe mount thing from Small Rig. It's a monitor mount actually, but it's just a standard 3/8. So I put it onto my 8200 over here, and now like this, somehow I think, is it in? There we go. Okay, so now obviously a whole lot heavier, a lot bigger, but I've done some portrait shoots like this because I can now do an on-camera flash, very Terry look. Video is still going to come out, by the way. I saw your responses on the previous video, and you guys just seem very interested in a new flash video, so we'll do something like this very soon. It just takes me a little bit longer to do those kinds of videos, but I definitely will do it. I'm excited to do it as well. But yeah, we can do like an on-camera flash look with the cage, because it allows me to just mount. I can even do a second flash here if I'm feeling extra strong and not carpal tunnel-y. But this just, I mean, look, I'm holding it by hand and I could just do click, click, and this would be a really cool, very unique look to photography, to your portrait work. Just a very trendy look in photography right now, but definitely something that's pretty simple to use, all because of the cage, and I can still separate the flash from the trigger. I can even put this on like a little stick and have it a little bit higher, so it's even more separated from the lens, creating a little bit more of contrast in your shot. But yeah, I love the ability, I love the usability of this cage and what it allows me to do with my photography. So let's just take this off because it's a little bit unbalanced. And next up, I just touched on this really briefly, but the trigger is still the trigger I was using when I had my X Pro 3 setup, and it's a Fuji Godox trigger, whatever it is. They all work the same with different cameras. You don't need to get the Nikon one for the Nikon one and the Canon one for the Canon one. I will say, however, it times out because it doesn't think it's connected to the camera. So every like minute or two, I gotta like just reopen it and be like, hey, by the way, you're still connected to this camera. But it'll still trigger the flashes just fine. I do like the new smaller one that's like kind of touchscreen. It looks cool, but honestly, this layout, this setup, I can do it without looking at it. I can have the camera. Oh, sorry, Mr. Camera. I can have my camera rigged up real high, and I can still change my settings. And because I know it by heart, I can still change the flash power without seeing the screen. Whereas with the new smaller one that you have, that's a touchscreen, I think you need to, like, it'll be hard to know what you're doing without actually seeing it or looking at what you're doing. So I'm still holding on to this one for now. It still works. It's plenty fine. Next up, the thing that probably gets me the most questions, other than maybe the battery, is the lens. I use a 30-year-old 90mm tilt shift lens for the vast majority of my work. And I've done it on portraits. I've done it run and gun for like lifestyle. I've done it for documentary work. I've used it for still life advertising. I've done it for architecture. I've used this lens in so many different situations, especially the ones that I wasn't expecting to use them in. Everything but maybe street. Other than that, I've shot it in so many different use cases, and I love how it looks. I love the perspective it gives me. I'm not going to go into too many of the details of what I can do with it, but for shifting perspectives or just creating vertical lines very vertically, helping me throw my focus in a certain way so that the shot looks a little bit different, not just miniaturizing everything. Love what this lens does for me. Again, it's 30 years old. It's allowed me to do a lot of cool things. It rotates. It looks cool. It gets people to ask questions, and it makes me look like more of an expert on set, just because I know a couple little things that people are asking me about, and it's just like, oh yeah, I needed to learn it because that's what I have, and it's honestly not that difficult. You just haven't learned it yet. But yeah, really cool, really fun to use. I love using it. It looks neat. Very, very, very smooth focus throw. The only drawback I would say from it is the magnification, which is like a 0.28, I believe. One of the things I want moving forward is a lot more magnification ability. So I'd like to be able to have a one-to-one representation, but even I read with extension tubes, I can get this all the way to 0.6 with still using all of the tilt shift ability. The new tilt shift 90mm version of this lens is like $3,000, and I just don't have it in me to get that. For the marginal increase in optical quality, it does give me a little bit more range in the tilt shift ability, and it also has, I think most importantly, it has the tilt and the shift independent of each other, whereas right now they're locked at 90 degrees. So I can't, if I want to tilt this way, I have to be shifting this way, and I can't independently change them from each other. I don't know, if you haven't used a tilt shift lens, this might be a little bit tricky, so I'm going to glance over this, but all to say, it has an extra couple features that this lens doesn't offer, and that's what basically 20 years of innovation was. But it's still an EF mount, and it's still manual focus, and it's still very similar to this, it just has a nice red ring on the end of it. Finally, I think what everyone's been asking is the camera itself, or the camera body in which I create all of my stuff with. And it's the Canon R8. I just tend to tape up all my stuff because since I started photography, I don't know why, this is just I like being an underdog kind of thing. I like having the being underdressed at an event. I like surprising people in an iceberg type of fashion. And I think what I do with all my cameras is always tape them up and make them look a little bit, worse, crappier than they really are, because it's not the camera that's taking the photo, it's the person behind the camera taking the photo. And I never want people to be like, ooh, that's a nice Canon, that's a nice Fuji, whatever. You must be taking nice photos because you have you have a really nice camera. Obviously, it kind of negates the first point I made about this having a nice big camera look that people think it's professional even before I take a single photo. But the tape on the camera is it just brings me back to why I started photography and reminding me that, like, oh yeah, it's not the camera, it's just like a tool, it's just a hammer. Yeah, I use it in that way. The camera itself is the R8, which is not the full-frame Canon with all the bells and whistles, and I do miss some of those bells and whistles. I'll be quite frank with you. I think the number one thing I miss the most is just the joystick in the back. I really wish this still had a joystick. All the cameras I've ever used had a little joystick in the back, and I miss that tactile thumb feeling. But I still have the ability to back button focus, which is something I really enjoyed and missed from when I went to Fuji. If any of you are a fan of the channel, you might remember I've spoken about this before, but I used to shoot with two 5DSRs. I had a 5D Mark III. I had like a bunch of Canon cameras before I switched to Fuji, which is when I started my YouTube channel. So I have a lot of Canon background. I just had sold everything because it was the and I needed a change in life. And now I'm back on Canon, and I feel like I'm at home again. I feel like it's mirrorless. It's a little bit different. There's some new technologies in there, but it still feels like, it's the same settings. It's the same menu system. Everything feels very familiar when I use them. I love the ergonomics of these cameras. The sensor itself is maybe a little bit less than I'd want it, especially coming from a 5DSR, having 50 megapixels and just having the ability to zoom in with seems like forever. And naturally, it just makes me want, I'm missing the top screen, I'm missing the joystick, and I want a little bit more resolution. So it just feels like the R5 would be a wise choice to move towards. But that might just be a little bit of greed talking, and I am still trying to remind myself that it's not the camera that takes the pictures, it is me. But I do think I'm getting a little bit to the limit of this camera's potential. And I'd like to see if I could push a slightly higher resolution camera with a little bit higher magnification, and just to get even more crisp, macro-type commercial advertising shots that I love taking, and hopefully have the ability to just create some more stuff for my clients that way. The new 5D or R5 Mark II just came out, so maybe the original R5 is going to be a little bit cheaper. Maybe you can get something refurbished or something from the Canon site. I don't know. We'll see. Let me know what you guys think I should get, what you are interested in me getting. If there's anything about my setup that I didn't answer, please let me know down in the comments. I'll do my best to answer everything. I'm not some big popular YouTuber. I'll do my best to answer every one of them. I probably see your comment, even if I don't like or interact with it. I've probably seen it, and yeah, just give me a shout. Let me know what you think. I hope you guys liked the video. Subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in a couple days. Later.